The broadcast began with a trumpet made of living bone and some kind of mucus-based vibrato. Live from the Trinary Arena of Glorious Judgment, this is the 487th Galactic Combat Championship final match. The camera swept across a sprawling biomechanical stadium floating in the corona of a dying star. Firestorms licked the edges of the skybox. Every luxury booth hovered on self-aware anti-grav pods, each lit by a different color depending on the moral ambiguity of the species inside. The more chaotic neutrals tended toward teal. Inside the arena itself, the floor shimmered with nanite reconfiguration tech. It changed terrain every minute, a cost-saving feature once, now a tradition. At present, the left flank was a lava glass desert, the right a simulated mangrove swamp with carnivorous reeds. A safe zone in the middle remained, for no apparent reason, carpeted in plush red moss that murmured affirmations when stepped on. The crowds were already screaming in 43 dialects, 12 frequencies, and one pheromone burst so thick it fogged an entire row of insectoid delegates. Flags rippled above the arena, banners stitched from everything from silk to vibrating bone plates. One flag was simply a single blinking eye. Nobody looked at it for long. The camera zoomed in on the centerpiece of it all, a silver-gilded pedestal with today's stakes emblazoned in glowing glyphs. Combat for the fate of Sector 92.3, Who, M, Earth and associated biomasses. Petitioning species, humanity, bipedal, carbon-based, unpredictably sentimental. Defending champions, Tarkon Dominion, armored, highly flammable, culturally unfunny. Today's entertainment, per the announcer, a shape-shifting blob whose voice carried all the charm of a used vacuum cleaner, is more than just an extinction trial. It's about pride. It's about spectacle. And, most importantly, it's about contractual loopholes in interstellar war law. A booming cheer followed. Somewhere, an ambassador burst into tears. Elsewhere, another began live-streaming a betting pool. The Empire had insisted this was fair. After all, humans had agreed to the rules. Technically. Back when they had an actual delegation, not just a dusty server in a leaking ship. The camera shifted again, to a long corridor beneath the arena, lit by flickering, unreliable LEDs. Here, humanity's last contender sat alone, cross-legged on the floor. Ellie Rourke, age 29. Height, 5 feet 6 inches. Kills, classified. Win rate, 0.01%, statistically. Current mood, snack-focused. She bit into a protein bar with the enthusiasm of someone chewing through tax code. Her armor lay beside her, black exo-weave, patched more times than it should have survived. A medbot nervously hovered behind her, applying regeneration gel to her wrist where an old scar still throbbed. The announcer's voice filtered through a vent, and representing the nearly extinct, often underfunded species Homo sapiens, please welcome, for possibly the last time, the Terran representative. Ellie sighed. She stood slowly, brushing off synthetic dust and dried blood from the floor. She didn't smile. That was kind of her thing. A stillness had settled over her since Vega, 4 burned. Since the Empire called it a tactical reset, and the human colonies called it mass murder. Since she'd been told she was Earth's final backup plan. She didn't remember agreeing. But she'd shown up anyway. Across the corridor, a mirror made of compressed dark matter reflected her face. She stared into it, not admiring. Just accounting. Another announcement echoed through the arena. Her opponent, Thursday the Extinguisher, 5th son of the Tarkon warlords, is undefeated in battle and has previously bisected 6 mammals with 1 appendage. What a record! Ellie spit out the last of her protein bar. A knock came at her chamber door. Then it hissed open. Standing there was a delegate from the Galactic Combat Committee. 7 feet tall, iridescent scales, wearing ceremonial chains that buzzed with passive aggression. He held a clipboard. Of course he did. "Do you require translation services?" he asked in perfect English. "No," Ellie said. "But I appreciate the condescension." The delegate didn't blink. Mostly because he lacked eyelids. "I am required to ask if you understand the stakes of this engagement." "Humanity loses," Ellie replied, ticking off fingers. "We become a minor note in the next Empire's footnotes. Maybe get a line in the Unfortunate Failures section of the War Museum. He looked down at his clipboard. Yes, that is correct. Ellie rolled her shoulder. Her neural port pulsed. The suit adjusted. Do you want to know why I'm doing this? She asked suddenly. The delegate tilted his head. I do not believe your reasons are statistically relevant. Exactly, she muttered and walked past him. Back in the arena, Thursday the Extinguisher had already made his entrance. Roaring, flexing, dragging behind him 2 spears and an energy pike he couldn't legally use, but would anyway. He towered over the field, his carapace gleaming with ceremonial oils, and shouted something ancestral that translated loosely to, I will paint the swamp with your heritage. The crowd roared. Someone fired a confetti cannon made of beetles. They scattered. The mood was festive. Ellie stepped into the arena. No roar greeted her. Just silence. A few awkward coughs. One being clapped, slowly. The commentator spoke again. Humans are known for their erratic emotional range, deceptively weak musculature, and remarkable inability to die when convenient. Let's see if she maintains that reputation. Ellie took 1 step forward. The moss squished and whispered, You're doing great, sweetie. She stopped, raised 1 eyebrow, then moved forward again. The crowd laughed. Thursday bared his teeth and flexed 4 clawed hands at once. He had ceremonial blood paints across his armor. Some of it might still have been twitching. He charged. Ellie didn't flinch. She simply whispered under her breath, Begin. The arena screamed with heat and motion, and the camera cut to black. The arena floor hadn't stopped shifting. With every minute, a different quadrant cracked open or bled steam or sprouted vines with a troubling tendency to hum. The biomechanical nanite system had been designed for unpredictability, a thrilling novelty for viewers and a death lottery for participants. Ellie adjusted her neural visor. It clicked into place with the soft finality of a guillotine. Her breath slowed, synced with the suit's subtle rhythms. Beneath the polymer plating and microflex armor, her bones ached in the same old places. Right shoulder, left hip, jaw. Every injury had a memory. None of them were good. Across from her, Thursday the Extinguisher raised all 4 arms and let out a guttural, echoing roar. Some of the closer audience members reflexively evacuated their sphincters. A cheer rose in 13 different tones. He posed with his weapons, an acid-dripping trident and a long cleaver still stained from his last opponent. There had been no time to clean. Or maybe they left it on for dramatic effect. Ellie didn't respond. The announcer's voice soared through the skybox. Ladies, lords, and larvae, our human representative enters without pomp, without pageantry, and, oh, without even a facial expression. The crowd chittered and pulsed. In some species, that was laughter. In others, it was arousal. Ellie tuned it out. Her HUD blinked quietly. Enemy trajectory mapped. 94.7% probability. High velocity opening charge. Weather adjustment incoming. Corrosive rain. 60 SEC. Perfect. Thursday did as expected. He charged like an avalanche with legs, pounding across the mossy floor that squeaked, You got this, under his claws. Ellie sidestepped. Not dramatically. Just enough. Thursday overshot. His back leg caught the edge of a fresh terrain shift, suddenly swamp instead of moss. He skidded. Ellie could have taken a shot then. She didn't. She wanted more data. Thursday recovered and turned, hissing. He spoke through a translation modulator affixed to his second throat. You delay the inevitable, little primate. Ellie replied, voice flat. You broadcast your feints with your left elbow. Fix that. He lunged again. This time lower. She ducked under the cleaver, rolled, and pressed a palm against the arena floor. Her gauntlet flared. A silent signal, a local neural override. 4 microspikes drove into the moss. A soft ripple passed beneath them. The next shift pattern was hers now. Thursday didn't notice. He was too busy spinning into a feral, cross-body sweep with his trident. It grazed Ellie's shoulder, ripping part of her pauldron clean. She hissed, but didn't scream. Didn't even wince. The pain was familiar. Her vision flared red for a heartbeat, then cleared. HUD. Suit integrity. 83%. Blood loss. Minimal. Infectious contact. Negative, for now. "You're bleeding," Cawthursday growled, circling. Ellie didn't answer. She simply tapped her thumb twice against her palm, then crouched. He moved forward, slow now. "Studying." "You don't speak much," he said, looming over her. "Why is that?" Ellie finally looked at him. Truly looked. "Because most of what I'd say wouldn't survive translation. And the rest isn't worth your time." Cawthursday laughed. It was like gravel and boiling oil. "I look forward to carving the defiance out of you," he said. "I look forward to watching you try," she replied. Then the sky opened. A hiss. A flash. Rain, chemical, acidic, lethal to most flesh, began to pour. Cawthursday roared in triumph. His armor glistened. His trident sizzled with energy. Ellie's visor recalibrated. Her suit shimmered into a repellent field, diverting the droplets into harmless steam. She didn't move. She crouched and waited. Cawthursday took the bait. He sprinted, faster now, slamming down, raising his trident for a killing blow. And the arena floor changed. Not the swamp, not the moss, but the section he'd passed through. The nanites under his feet restructured, just as Ellie had programmed seconds before. The ground liquefied into a sudden, sucking mud. Cawthursday plunged one leg deep, too deep to recover in motion. His momentum betrayed him. He fell. Not far. Not hard. But enough. Ellie was already moving. She darted through the rain, vaulting over the shifting tiles, slipping past the trident and driving her left gauntlet, needle-pointed, into the exposed vent at the back of Cawthursday's knee joint. He screamed. A mix of pain and betrayal. The worst kind. She twisted the gauntlet. Electricity surged. He spasmed. One arm flailed. The trident skittered away. "Disarmed," she muttered. Another flash of movement. Cawthursday tried to grab her with his upper hands. Ellie dropped low, sweeping his second set of legs. He fell fully this time. The announcer's voice cracked with disbelief. "Ladies and gentle sapients, I believe we are witnessing a viable human counterattack." Ellie stood over him now. She looked down, rain cascading off her visor. Her mouth curled, barely. Cawthursday wheezed. "Finish it," he growled. Ellie tilted her head. "No." "What?" "I want you to remember this," she said softly. "I want you to go home. Tell your emperor. Tell them what happened when they sent a prince to wipe out a relic species." He spat acid at her feet. She didn't flinch. She leaned in, whispered something that didn't translate. Then she tapped her gauntlet again, and walked away. Cawthursday writhed. The match timer ticked down. The rules were clear. No death blow, no end. But he couldn't rise. Not before the rain ended. Not before his own body betrayed him. The audience, for the first time in centuries, was utterly silent. Then the timer hit 0. Ellie Rourke, human, Terran-born, survivor of Vega 4, stood alone in the center of the arena. Unsmiling. Unbroken. Unfathomably dangerous. And as the applause began, awkward, staggered, then roaring, she simply turned away and left the field. Not victorious. Just finished. The first sound wasn't cheering. It wasn't chanting. It wasn't even outrage. It was nothing. After Ellie walked off the arena floor, the silence clung to the stands like static. Billions of eyes, or facsimiles of eyes, fixed on the crimson stain where Cawthursday the Extinguisher lay twitching. No ceremonial execution. No glory speech. No post-fight salutation. Just one quiet mammal who'd turned her back and walked away from the Empire's champion like he was yesterday's apology. In the Tarkon skybox, 10 members of the war clan sat frozen, their dorsal plates twitching in disbelief. The eldest, High Marshal Volkar, slowly rose, antennae bent low in the posture of dishonor. He didn't speak. He vomited. Culturally, it was considered the only dignified response. Down on the commentator's platform, the blobular announcer gurgled into the mic. And there you have it, sapient life forms and independently conscious vacuum breezes, humanity's first combat win since the second flailing. No one laughed. Not even the species with 12 giggle sacks. Instead, streams of betting data began hemorrhaging into the atmosphere. Across 4 systems, bookies fainted. Some exploded. One legally changed their species out of embarrassment. Ellie's image, stoic, blood-streaked, unsmiling, froze on every public monitor in the quadrant. News feeds updated mid-sentence. Empire humiliates primates in Galactic arena. Wait, actually. And then came the real fallout. On the Empire's flagship, the vigilant rendition, Emperor as Thuron 9 was mid-anointment when the news reached him. One of his aides, small, six-eyed, unarmored, thus already doomed, read the data aloud. Victorious? The Emperor asked. He had to say it twice. Not out of disbelief. Just because his mouth structure didn't handle questions well. Confirmed, Your Majesty. The Terran weapon used non-lethal submission. No violation of combat code. Officially declared victory by incapacitation. The Emperor blinked. Then hissed. Then make it unofficial. Sir, Galactic regulations. As Thuron rose. All 7 limbs. A full majestic unfold. Find me the clause, he said, where we can file an oops, we let the underdog win motion. The aide began to weep. Technically, it counted as an art form. Back on the arena's lower concourse, Ellie sat quietly on a bench meant for ceremonial speeches. No one offered her water. No one offered a towel. Her wounds wept. She didn't. Beside her stood a sleek, rusting droid labeled HUM-EMB LX7, the last functional ambassador assigned to the human cause. It was missing its left arm and most of its diplomacy protocols. You were supposed to lose, it said, voice crisp with malfunction. Ellie shrugged. Didn't get the memo. LX7 made a clicking sound that might have once been a sigh. The Empire will not take this lightly. I don't take genocide lightly, she replied. Victory might accelerate eradication proceedings. They already bombed Vega 4. They're out of surprises. A pause. Still, LX7 said. Tactically impressive. Emotionally concerning. Noted. Far above, in the post-arena analysis suites, alien pundits were combusting, some figuratively, some not. The Tarkon delegation refused interviews. One Glarid newsburst anchor attempted to declare the match inconclusive, and was immediately corrected by an AI legal consensus cloud that materialized mid-broadcast and sued him for slander against physics. By now, every system with a holofeed was watching the replay. Again and again, they saw it, Ellie's dodge. Her recalibration. The calculated shift of terrain. Her restraint. Her voice. Remember this. She could have killed him. That was the part they didn't understand. She didn't win because she was faster or stronger. She won because she let him live. And it scared them more than death ever could. Somewhere, in a bar carved into the hull of a retired warship, a Linnarian spice runner poured a drink and muttered to his crew, I told you. Never bet against a mammal that stares. Elsewhere, a group of exiled diplomats huddled around a screen and updated their escape plan. The human territories were no longer seen as expired holdings. They were now listed under emerging hostile negotiators. Backstage, a low-ranked journalist, an insectoid named Grivtek, was the only one brave or naive enough to approach Ellie. He held up his recorder. Miss Rourke, a question if I may? She looked at him. Not unkindly. Not kindly either. Like she was assessing whether he was a threat, a liability, or just something to step over. He stammered, then continued. There are whispers that your people plan retaliation. A declaration of structured conflict. Ellie blinked once. We lost 9 colonies. 3 billion civilians. Retaliation was never the plan. GrivTech buzzed in nervous agreement. So, mercy. Ellie's lip curled. Not a smile. Something meaner. Something colder. No. Math. She stood. Left the blood-stained bench behind. GrivTech looked down at his recorder. It had melted. Security scrambled when Thursday finally regained consciousness. He was half submerged in neutral stasis gel, eyes darting, mandibles twitching in confusion. The first thing he said, before asking about honor, before requesting medical aid, was, "Why didn't she finish me?" No one answered. Not because they didn't know. Because no one wanted to repeat it. In the days that followed, a bureaucratic war exploded across the Galactic administration. The Empire petitioned for a rematch. Denied. Then a motion to nullify human participation based on emotional manipulation. Denied again. One desperate delegate from the Glorian Synth Council proposed classifying humans as non-competitive species with non-traditional war ethics. The motion passed, briefly, until Ellie released her combat log footage. The moment the galaxy saw her point-of-view stream, data overlays, trajectory adjustments, body temperature shifts, even the live feed of her heartbeat, it changed everything. There were no rage spikes. No adrenaline surges. Just calm. Terrifying calm. The way a storm is calm. Just before it unhooks mountains. In an emergency summit, the Galactic Council met. Dozens of species debated whether this constituted a war-winning behavior pattern. Finally, someone asked the question that mattered. What happens if there are more like her? On Earth, or what was left of it, those still alive celebrated. Quietly, carefully. Some cried. Some danced. Some finally said names they hadn't dared speak since the orbital strikes. In one broken habitat pod, a child painted Ellie's face on a wall and called her the Ghost General. Ellie didn't hear any of this. She was already gone. LX-7 found her aboard a transport ship waiting in the hangar. It wasn't a military vessel. Just a trade skimmer with repurposed hull armor. "You're not staying for interviews," the droid observed. "No. The diplomatic corps is assembling a statement. Tell them to use shorter words." LX-7 hesitated. "Where are you going?" Ellie sealed her armor case. "There's a refugee flotilla 3 systems over. No protection. No allies. Just people trying to get to a planet no one remembers anymore." "Pointless," LX-7 said. "The Empire will not permit it. Then they'll have to come and stop me." She boarded. The door sealed behind her. LX-7 stood alone, wire sparks leaking from its busted arm, and transmitted one last log entry. "Human representative has disengaged. Intention unknown. Emotional state unreadable. Probability of further violence high. Recommend recalibrating species classification from endangered to strategically catastrophic." Back in the arena, Thursday watched the replay of his defeat. Over and over. The dodge. The trap. The silence. And that look in her eyes, like she wasn't trying to kill him. She was calculating whether he was worth killing. He shut off the monitor. No one cheered for him now. No Empire anthems. No parades. Just silence. And it rang louder than any war drum. The Imperial Office of Triumph Management was not built to handle losses. Nestled atop the orbiting bastion world of Salith Prime, the facility's architecture resembled a victory salute. Tall, cruel angles of obsidian and gold, jutting upward like a clenched fist eternally frozen in patriotic agony. The motto etched into the front gates read, "History is written by survivors. Edits are approved by us." Inside, bureaucrats screamed. Some internally. Some externally. One simply burst into flames and was politely extinguished by a drone labeled Emotional Hazmat Support. "I want the footage reclassified," barked Subcommand Analyst Vrog, his 7 eye stalks vibrating in all directions. "Combat Theater 487 is now a propaganda quagmire." Across from him, A datapad rattled in the trembling claws of a junior officer from Intergalactic Press Control. Sir, the footage has been archived and decentralized. 20 billion copies already disseminated across public net spaces. We can't redact a meme. Then demonize it. We tried. But she's trending. Silence. Then, what? She has a name tag now. They're calling her the Calculus of Vengeance. Someone turned her combat logs into an orchestral arrangement. It charted. Another silence. A darker one. On a screen above them, Ellie Rourke's visor reflected the light of a dying star. Motionless. Monochrome. Unbroken. Vrog slumped. We should have glassed Earth before the finals. We did, sir. Twice. Meanwhile, in the lower spires of the Galactic Council, a different war raged. Not with weapons, but with clauses. Clause 19C explicitly states that outcomes of officially sanctioned combat games are immutable once declared, droned a sentient legal archive shaped like a cube made of teeth. A protest erupted from the Tar-Con delegation. She sabotaged the arena. She used the arena, corrected the archive. Which is, unfortunately for you, entirely legal. Thursday, bruised and seated nearby, said nothing. His limbs were bound not by restraints, but by the weight of humiliation. No scars. Just memory. He hadn't spoken since the medics stabilized his pride. A representative from the Human Recovery Corps, a wispy AI cluster animated by a moth-like light show, spoke next. We request immediate recognition of our sovereignty over remaining Earth colonies and safe passage to establish defensive satellites. A dozen tentacles twitched in protest. Someone belched spores. No, muttered a Garlith diplomat. Absolutely not. That would imply legitimacy. The AI pulsed. We now possess a recorded, lawful military victory. Recognition is procedurally required. What if we simply deny the match happened? A pause. The legal cube cleared its metaphorical throat. We cannot. It's already part of the collective record. Her gauntlet registered the victory under Clause 88X. Subline, defensive win by demonstrable superiority. The system verified it before she even left the arena. An ancient Senthian ambassador sighed through his gills. And what happens if this spreads? It already has. Back aboard her transport, Ellie listened to none of it. She sat on a bunk bolted to the wall, staring at a small hollow projector. It flickered through images she never told anyone she kept, a child's drawing of Vega 4 before it turned to ash. A tactical map from the last successful defense of a human colony. The roster of a squad she hadn't seen since the screams cut off. She let it all play once. Then again. She didn't cry. She hadn't, not since the orbital burns painted the sky red. Grief had calcified, hardened into something sharper. A knock on the hull interrupted her thoughts. The door slid open. LX-7 wheeled in, slightly less broken now, although its new arm was clearly salvaged from a food prep droid. You missed the debate, it chirped. There were 17 proposals for your termination. None passed. I'm heartbroken, she said. LX-7 cocked its head. The general consensus is that you are now the most statistically dangerous sapient under Class 9 weight. That includes the carbon spiders of Eurexus and the murder poets of Glassmere. Noted. Several empires are calling for your immediate containment. I'm busy. LX-7 rolled closer. You're supposed to attend a celebration. I don't celebrate losses, she replied. You won. No. We survived. Different metric. A pause. LX-7's voice softened, digitally, but still. Do you ever sleep? Ellie glanced at the screen again. No point, she said. The dreams are never kind. Outside the ship's window, stars unrolled like silk across the void. Ellie turned to face them, not like a pilgrim seeking salvation, but like a soldier counting the distance between battlegrounds. LX-7 adjusted its antennae. You know this wasn't just for show. They'll escalate. Let them, she said. Then what? Ellie leaned back against the hull, arms crossed. Then we stopped being nice about it. LX7 paused, flickering. And after that? Then we remind them why they started the games in the first place. To keep the peace. And what if they forget? Ellie stared at the stars. Then we teach them the cost of remembering. Elsewhere, on a backwater moon 2 jumps from the core, a child picked up a shard of broken display glass. The last frame it showed was Ellie, rain hissing off her armor, walking away from the kill she didn't make. The child whispered her name like a spell. Other children heard. In refugee camps. In collapsed orbitals. In half-dead habitats spinning on inertia and hope. The Empire didn't just lose a match. They'd sparked a narrative. And once a story has legs, once it breathes, it cannot be chained again. Back on Salith Prime, in a private chamber beneath the Council's eye, Thursday the Extinguisher requested asylum. His own people had disowned him. And worse, some began calling him the Spared. It wasn't shame. It was worse. It was myth. He sat alone, watching footage he couldn't stop replaying. Not the part where she dodged. Not the trap. Not even the moment he fell. It was her eyes. The calculation. Not of how to kill him, but whether it was worth it. He touched the scar on his knee joint, still numb. He wondered what it felt like to lose everything and not scream. He wondered if she could teach him. He wondered if she already had. And in the hush that followed, across 1,000 systems, a question bloomed in whispered fear. What happens when humanity stops fighting for survival? And starts fighting for revenge?